Hi, and welcome to the show where we share the stories of the many who intersect with our healthcare system but are rarely heard from. My name is Kevin Poe, founder and editor of Kevin MD. Today on the show, we have Michelle Heary. She's a dermatopathologist, and she wrote the Kevin MD article, A Pathologist Message to the Public. It got 47,000 shares on Kevin MD, so I'm interested in hearing more behind that story. But first off, Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So before we get to your article, I was wondering if you could share your story and your journey to where you are today.
Sure. So I'm basically considered to be a very non-traditional, I have a non-traditional approach to where I am today. I took a very long route to get to medical school. I did many different things, whether it be research, grad school, being a medic on the ambulance, a lot of different things to where I decided to go to medical school, and that I realized it was right for me as opposed to doing something else within the medical field. And having taken so long, I ended up having to go out of the country. So that's another kind of different thing. So I'm considered a foreign medical graduate. I went to Ross University in the Caribbean and then came back and did a lot of rotations all over, from Yale to UC Davis, all over, and realized what I wanted to do was pathology. And that's not a very popular field to go into, but I really felt the most at home there. And even though I love, clinical medicine and incorporate that into, my career today, I wanted something beyond clinical medicine. So I wanted to have that pathology background.
Great. And we are filming this the first week of June, and you wrote your article back in March. So how has
Yeah.
the pandemic affected you and your practice?
Yeah. So, my practice so I'm a clinical dermatopathologist. So having done clinical medicine as well as pathology and specializing in skin pathology only, our practice is basically half pathology. So that we could do that, no problem. I can look at slides and not have to worry about the pandemic, but the clinical aspect, obviously we shut the whole office down. And obviously most people did. And in that time where kind of everyone was shut down except for urgent sort of issues, I realized that my strong clinical background that I had with my really amazing critical care training that I had in my hospital that I did internship in, that I may need to kind of draw upon that, even though it's been a long time, over 10 years since I had been there. But I realized that this was my opportunity, my time, my downtime that I needed to prepare in case I was needed in the field on the front line. And that time period when I wrote this article, I really was going through a lot of, obviously we were all going through a lot of turmoil. My husband is also a physician in radiology, and he really couldn't take that time to not go into the hospital. He still had to do that. Even though he has underlying health issues and asthma, and I thought, my God, like this is going to come home to roost at some point. What if we're really actually affected by this personally? What if something happens to him and I'm also working in ICU? What's going to happen to our kids? Like these real life questions that a lot of my colleagues were asking who are dual physician households. Like, what happens if we die what happens to our kids? So many people were having these conversations and writing up their wills and trusts and figuring out what to do if something happens, since we're potentially on the front lines. So I felt all of this, turmoil and angst and fear, and I had to write it somehow so that people could see what we're going through and see how their actions were affecting the very people that were, taking care of them. And I felt a lot of, anger too. I was sheltering at home. I was doing, everything I could for my family and obviously my patients in my community to help protect them. But there were so many people that just seemed like they didn't care. And that was the basis of my article. Is it's not all about you. It's about the people around you, and how are you supporting the people around you? How are you supporting your healthcare workers who you will assume will take care of you when you get sick? but you're not helping yourself to not get sick, right? Or you're not protecting those healthcare workers, so they are not getting sick and dying. And I just had so much anger, and that's where this came from.
I want to read you an excerpt from this article. So you write, "The events over the last couple of weeks have affected me deeply. Of course, I'm concerned about a novel virus that is infecting and killing people, but I'm more distraught over the reaction of the people, the response of the state and federal governments, the blatant disregard of science and epidemiology, and the warnings of our physicians on the front lines." Now, you wrote that in March, and now we're in the beginning of June, and I think those words are pretty prescient. So tell me what's changed 3 months ago when you wrote this article to now.
Yeah, unfortunately, things have got a lot worse, I think, in the way that people are interpreting and the data out there and how they're acting. So I'm in Orange County, California. So we just had our public health officer, an MD, PhD, who advocated for universal masking in the county. She was harassed. She was called a Nazi. She had people camp out on her front lawn, and she had to eventually resign because she had 3 young children that were being harassed. And now the county doesn't have a masking, mandatory masking, because of these people. And I feel like whatever I wrote about in March has been completely amplified. And in Orange County, at least, you know, we haven't seen these crazy numbers that we are worried about, but we haven't seen those numbers because of the measures that were taken. And all it means now that we're starting to reopen is that we have hospital beds for you when you get sick. It doesn't mean that everything is okay. And the attitude that we have here and a lot of the country is that this is not a big deal, and people are getting hurt, shot, harassed for trying to just impose a very simple masking order. I'm just wearing a mask. And that really does bring me back to all the tenets that made me write this article in the first place, is that you're not thinking about others. You know, as a physician, we think about others. And that's why so many doctors and nurses were getting sick and dying, because they were putting patients' needs above their own by not having proper PPE, or even running into a room without having anything on, and then they were getting sick and dying. Well, this is unfortunate. This is not how it should be. We as doctors automatically think about others, but you know, we can't legislate that onto other people. And unfortunately, this is how this virus is spreading. It's that people are spreading it out in the community, and then they're not being considerate of the other people. So it's about themselves. I don't want to wear a mask. I shouldn't have to wear a mask. I should be able to do whatever I want. But in reality, it's not all about you. And when people say that, people like me, people like, you know, Dr. Quick in Orange County who resigned, then they're labeled as the bad guy. And I just don't understand where this is coming from. You know, this is real science. This is real epidemiology. This is being considerate. It's not an infringement, as I put in that article as well. This is not an infringement upon your rights or your freedom. This is a pandemic. There is a difference, and we shouldn't be made the bad guy.
So what are some solutions? I'm in primary care internal medicine, and if I were to see a patient who may not believe in universal masking, and 50% of the country approximately doesn't believe in masking, it's unfortunately been politicized. So what are some of your tips and suggestions for us to approach patients who may not believe in something as simple as masking?
So I think a lot of the times the frustration that the public is having from physicians is that they feel like they're being talked down to, or they're being dictated to. And I mean, this is a systemic problem in medicine, which is why so many people don't trust their doctor or whatever. I mean, we can get into that's a whole other thing. But what I try to tell my colleagues, and what I try to tell patients or people in the community who are super duper anti-mask, is I want to see their point of view. I see their point of view. I try to give them the actual data and the science, which is tough these days because there are a lot of conflicting articles out there and a lot of conflicting information for these people to look at. But I am trying to give them the information instead of being like sort of like this dictator, you need to do this, you need to do that for your own good. No one really responds well to that. You know, they're not gonna, they don't want someone telling them what to do, and right or wrong. So my suggestion is to try to come at it in a different way, and to have them relate personally, you know, to the situation. And it's not just us versus them. It's, you know, this is for everybody. You have to think about everybody. These are the statistics out there. These are the measures we can take to try to mitigate and try to decrease the risk. Inevitably, they will always come back to say that we're going to get it regardless, or everyone, you know, there's not a big problem. It's like the flu. You know, they'll always come up with these different talking points, but you just have to give them repetitively the truth, which is, you know, does change from time to time. And that's something that, again, is a problem. But this is medicine. You know, nothing is concrete. You can never say and something's 100% all the time. That is medicine. So things change. This is a new virus. Our information, our data changes, our understanding changes all the time. We shouldn't be held accountable for that. That's the way science works. It's not concrete. So today's recommendations may not be the same as tomorrow's, and that's the way it works. That's medicine. That is it. So you cannot say like, well, you've changed your mind and therefore I'm not going to believe you anymore. People have to understand the process. They have to understand where we're coming from. Things change, but we're doing it to help the greater good. And that is something that people are failing to understand. They wanted their lives back to the way they were. They want to have everything back to normal. Unfortunately, that is not going to happen. That world is not existing anymore. And I think that level of denial is hard to get past. And unfortunately, until we get, you know, more information and more understanding, and we can get that message out in a concise way so that people understand it, we're always going to have these issues. We're going to have these problems with people not wanting to, you know, play along.
Is there anything that's surprised you during the course of the pandemic so far?
I'm constantly surprised, like almost every day. Like every day, I'm surprised at how much people are antagonistic toward medicine and science. They and how much, like, really people are bullying almost to an extent. You know, if you post something that is an actual scientific fact, you're going to have, like, for every post, you're going to have 20 people saying that you're wrong, and they have absolutely no background in medicine, epidemiology, or any real hard science to back it up. And I have never seen so many armchair physicians and epidemiologists and experts out there. This is so surprising to me. I don't know why. It shouldn't be, but I have been constantly, every day, surprised by the sheer, like, lack of respect for people in my station, or, you know, others that are even more qualified to have a medical opinion, that they're just being discredited or attempted to be discredited. I guess I don't really understand that very well, right? That's something that has surprised me daily. And it's just now the norm.
Well, my final question, Michelle, and thank you so much for sharing your insight. What's your take-home message for the Kevin MD audience?
So my take-home message is going to be, try to do your best to relate to these people who are so adamant against, you know, public health policy, and try to see it from their point of view. I think that, you know, denial and anger are big things that we have to deal with. And I think that my psychology or my psychiatry colleagues are really on board with this. They try to rationalize with people and try to get them, you know, to see their own issues around it. But do what you can to just put the word out, give your unbiased, non-political, expert opinion out there. Don't engage in a way that is going to be harmful for you or cause any undue stress. Just put it out there and realize you cannot change everybody, but even if you change a couple of people, that's huge, because that's all we can do right now. And just try to be considerate of other people, or pass that on to those around you who are so against, masking and all the safety protocols. Try to be considerate. Try to be considerate of their state that they're in, and then have them just to be considerate to other people around them. And honestly, that's like the biggest thing to me, is just there's so many people just not caring what others are saying. And if we just stop and listen, try to meet them on their level. This is what they want. And this would make a much better dialogue than just trying to ram it some public policy down their throat. They have to see the why. Whether they do it or not, I don't know. But we'll see what happens when they go to the hospital, right? We'll see what happens when all the ICU beds get filled up. I hope it doesn't get to that point, though.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your insight. On the show, we have Michelle Heary. She is a dermatopathologist, and she wrote the Kevin MD article, A Pathologist's Message to the Public. Michelle, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. Thank you so much.